Hi, everyone. This is Janet Hale with the Rock Island County Health Department. Thank you for joining us. Today we have with us Roxanna Moritz, the auditor of the Scott County, the auditor in Scott County, and Kinney, the clerk in Rock Island County. In addition, I'll be making the points for Rock Island County, and Ed Rivers will speak for Scott County. As far as case counts in Rock Island County, we have 13 new cases for a total of 2,921. Our deaths stand at 79, and we currently have 16 people hospitalized in Rock Island County. Ed, would you give the cases for Scott County, please?
In Scott County today or this afternoon, the number of cases is 2,830, and our deaths are 27.
So as we talk to you today, we are officially 6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic in our state. 6 months is a large amount of time, and parts of us may be changed forever when we look at crowds at events or individuals gathering in other areas. However, we are learning how to continue living during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that includes one of the activities that defines us as Americans, voting. We all accept some level of risk into coming into contact with COVID-19 anytime we leave our home. There are different types of voting options available to each carry out a different type of risk. First, voting by absentee ballot is the lowest risk as it nearly eliminates the number of people you come in contact with. Early voting at a location identified by your county auditor or clerk limits the number of people you come in contact with, and since you are allowed to choose when you vote, including during non-peak times. And finally, you can vote on the day of the election at your designated polling place. That has additional risk because your ability to socially distance is limited and you cannot control the size of crowds. We encourage you to consider which type of voting is best for you, your family, and your community. Make sure that you have any health concerns that you may have are included in the decision that you make.
Should you choose either in-person voting option, we encourage you to take steps to protect yourself and others. This is also true for any members of our community who will be volunteering their time as poll workers at polling locations. Recognize that you will very likely be in close contact with individuals at your polling place, closer than 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. We ask that you do your part and consider COVID-19 safety while you're doing your part as an American citizen. So you should avoid crowds, vote at off-peak times such as mid-morning if possible. If driving to the poll and your schedule allows, monitor the voting line from your car and join it when it's shorter. Make sure that you wear a mask when you're in line, when you're talking to others, to the poll workers, and when voting. And as much as possible, keep 6 feet of distance between yourself and others. And take hand sanitizer and use it often. But most of all, please, please stay home if you think there's any chance you're sick. Because of the close distance you may be to others, if you are sick with COVID-19, there's a good chance you'd be exposing others to the virus in this type of situation. Holding a presidential election during a pandemic is no small feat, but it's nonetheless important. We know that safety during this kind of event will require each of us to do our part, as well as the careful planning of our election officials. We're happy to have both of our local election officials on the call to describe the systems that are in place for in-person voting during a pandemic. Back to you, Brooke.
Thank you, Ed and Nita. So first we will hear from Kinney, the county clerk for Rock Island County. Karen is off-site, so we do not have video, but we do have audio. So she will be sharing some information with you.
Hello.
We can hear you. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, I missed the question because I was unmuting.
No problem.
Oh, you would
Go
like
ahead,
me
and
to
if you'd like
explain? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
I'd love to share this with everyone. We feel like we have made adequate preparations. We've gone far and beyond the call of duty when it comes to making our election judges as well as our voters safe in the vote centers by stockpiling plenty of PPE for their use. We have face shields, hand sanitizer, wipes. There will be plenty of PPE to protect everyone should they feel like they need to go to the polls. For the people that feel uneasy about it or they think it's a risk, I would advise them to vote by mail, which we've tried to make even easier. They don't even have to mail it. They can bring it down to the Rock Island County Clerk's office, and we have our new official vote by mail drop box, so they don't even have to come in the building. All they have to do is get out of their car and walk to our door and drop it in the drop box. It's under security, so it's safe, it's easy, it's convenient. I can't think of any reason why anybody wouldn't want to do that unless they just enjoy. I know a lot of people do. A lot of voters do. They love going to the polls. But this is not really a good time to do that. And oftentimes they use the excuse, well, I like visiting with my neighbors. But this really is not a time to visit with your neighbors. I mean, if you want to talk to your neighbors, call them on the phone, send them a greeting card. I don't know, but gathering in the polls, I would not advise. Voting starts, early voting starts, which would be safer than waiting till election day, this Thursday in the county clerk's office. We will begin with the hours of 8 to 4:30. And then on October 19th, we will also be open at Western Illinois University on the riverfront. And those hours will be from 11 to 7. And again, all the election judges will be taught cleaning procedures, cleaning the pens off, the stylus off, the tables off on a regular basis. So we're going to do the best we can with this, and hopefully it's the right way to do it. Are there any questions?
Not quite yet. We will be monitoring that, and we'll get back with you after we hear from Roxanna.
Oh, okay.
So
okay. I'm jumping the gun.
No, you're fine. You're just ready. Thank you. Okay. Next, we will be hearing from Roxanna Moritz, the Scott County Auditor and Commissioner of Elections. Please go ahead, Roxanna.
Well, thank you, Brooke. I'm really happy that you invited us to be a participant on here because voting is a very important issue in our life. And we want to make sure and ensure that every single person feels like they have an adequate opportunity to participate in the process. Of course, because of COVID, we are, encouraging those that feel like that's within their realm to vote early. But we want to ensure to the public that whatever their course may be, that we want them to participate in this general election. That being said, so we're sitting right now with 1/3 of our election in Scott County. We have about 34,000 early requests that have already been sent. And so hopefully that will lessen the opportunity for people to be at the polls and put themselves in a location where they may not be desirous of staying healthy. We started, and on our website right now, we have early voting starting just 1 week before the election. But today I received a grant for $286,000. So we're going to modify that to have 3 weeks of early voting at the locations that we have picked. And that should be up on our website tomorrow. Of course, we will have all of the PPE equipment that we had in the primary, and we have been blessed, as I'm sure Karen has been probably from Homeland Security is giving us a drop. So we are getting all of our masks, gloves, sanitizers, and disinfectants are being supplied to us at no cost through Homeland Security. So that's wonderful in a fiscal sense to Scott County, not having to worry about that. We are ensuring that all 63 of our precincts will be open, unlike what happened in the primary, to make sure that there are less people at each polling location. Whereas before we consolidated, the opportunity for more people being there is not a good thing, with possibly having 30 to 50,000 people voting all at the same time in Scott County. We want to make sure that everyone knows that at our locations, we'll have greeters that will help them know what the process is, give them their own personal pen, give them their own hand wipe, make sure that they are in their correct precinct, and make sure that they are social distancing, whether that's inside or outside of the location. We'll have 2 people that do nothing but clean after each person has voted, making sure that the locations are being sanitized in between all of the voters that we have. Our workers will have masks, face shields, and all of the other PPE equipment that we had in the primary, along with sneeze guards, and will be social distanced so that the voters are not within 6 feet of each other at their tables as well. We've taken steps to ensure that we're all going to be open with the extra funding that I've gotten. If I've changed any of my precincts, I'll make sure that all of my voters are aware by mail where their opportunity is to vote on Election Day if they have not taken that opportunity to vote either at our office or one of the early voting sites. So we're not the same as Illinois. Our dates are a little different, I believe. So our first opportunity to mail out a ballot is October 5th. So any of those individuals that have requested an absentee ballot will get that ballot after October 5th. And that will also be the first day that we do early in-person voting at 600 West 4th Street. That's our administration building on the first floor in the boardroom. Anyone that wants to vote early before the libraries open up, they're welcome to come to our facility and vote. They can drop off their already voted ballot to us inside the location, or a drop box that is right outside of our location and has been there permanently for as long as I can remember. But if they have any questions, obviously we always encourage them to give us a call at our location, which is the Scott County Auditor's office. We also have on our website, for people that want to track their process, they can track their request all the way through their ballot process. So they can track that I've gotten their request, they can track that we've sent their ballot, and they can track that we've received their ballot. So they can have security in knowing that we've actually gone through the process of receiving their ballot so that they don't have to be worried. We have a lot of concerns in this 2020 general election and a lot of confusion. This is one way to ensure to them that they know that we've received their request, that we've mailed their ballot, and that we've gotten it back. We also have put on our website on the front page a place where the public can somewhat be engaged in that process. So every day they can track, who's mailing back those ballots, not necessarily by a name, but by a number. They can look at the demographics of the age of that individual, and they can also drill down into each one of their precincts. And that'll help us as administrators of elections to better know how many poll workers we need to have at each location come Election Day. So we're looking forward to having a very engaged election on November 3rd, and just wanting to ensure to the public that every opportunity is going to be made available to them to vote, no matter whether that's early voting, an early voting site, or on in their precinct on Election Day. But of course, encouraging them in these trying and difficult times to do an early request if they feel comfortable. So I would be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, it does look like we have 2 that have popped up. The first one for Roxanna, I'll just read it aloud so everyone can hear it. Are those 34,000 requests for absentee ballots? Have you sent them to voters yet? And is 34,000 a third of all registered voters?
So 34,000 requests, not ballots. Our ballots cannot go in the mail until May 5th. if I said that wrong, I apologize, but 34,000 requests are in. Ballots are mailed the first day that they can be mailed by law. 29 days before an election in Iowa is October 5th. And 34,000 is about a third of our registered voters. So we have 130,000 registered voters, but we have 116,000 that are active registered voters. So typically we look at the active registered voters that have voted in the last 2 general elections. Obviously in a presidential year, that could be a little bit different. We're expecting that we will see probably somewhere around 60,000 early requests, either by mail or in person. So that would be voting at my counter, downstairs, early voting, or at any one of the library sites.
Thank you. We do have another question. I'll start with Karen on this one. Karen, I've unmuted you. What are some of the biggest challenges this election compared to 4 years ago? So if you want to summarize what you see as some of the biggest issues.
Am I on?
I hear you now, Karen. Yes, you are.
Okay, and you wanted to know, the recording came on while you were asking the question. What was the question
Sure.
again?
Some of the biggest challenges of this election compared to 4 years ago, if you just want to summarize some of those.
Oh, it's like night and day because of the COVID. The pandemic has presented quite a list of challenges that we have to meet to keep our public safe, to keep our voters safe, such as cleaning supplies, wearing face masks throughout the day. It's a long day for the election judges, especially sitting there, processing voter after voter with a face mask on. So I respect them for everything they do. I value them. We couldn't run the elections without them. So, but yes, 4 years ago, if someone would have told me that this was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have believed it. You have to see it to believe it.
Thank you. Roxanna, would you like to ask the same question?
Sure. The biggest challenges I think in this presidential year are, so I had said this earlier in an op-ed, is COVID, cybersecurity, civil unrest, and confusion. So we have 3 C's went to 4 C's. COVID is challenging for all of us because of social distancing. So just in knowing that we will have to open and be available to get good results effectively and efficiently, accurately, and timely on election night in social distancing and opening all of those ballots come election is a challenge, because before we could have multiple people in one location opening and tabulating at the same time. Now, because of social distancing, I will have to separate them physically on site, and my location is not really set up to do so. So it's been challenging for us and for the Board of Supervisors, who I've had to kick out so that we can take over their location. There's a lot of confusion in this election, a lot of misinformation, where people normally would have gotten their news, say 8 years ago, from their local news channels, are now listening to a national narrative, because we've all changed to really getting our information from those national news media. And with that said, every state is different in their laws and their regulations. I have, my hands full just keeping track of Scott County. I have no idea how Illinois works. Just keeping track of my own is enough. So I think that the voters need to understand, when they're listening to a national narrative, that their own county is probably different than what they're hearing. So a lot of confusion in this election, and a lot of misinformation because of social media. We've seen that social media has been able to, perpetuate what are normal instances in elections, but perhaps because they don't know our laws, they view it differently. So I've had people that have said, look, I've got 6 of these request forms. How are they going to know, they're going to send me 6 ballots? We have policies and procedures that have been put in place. We're going to follow all of the same policies and procedures that we've done in the past to ensure that we have a safe election. And so people need to realize that there are other actions being taken. So just because someone sends 4 or 5 requests in, they only get 1 ballot. There's confusion with what we hear nationally about the postmaster and the mail. So I think people are a little more on edge and a little more participatory, which is really good in a civic way, because a lot of people are working from home or are at home. And then therefore, because of that, maybe are paying a little more closer attention to this election and seeing what happens in an election. So they're being a little more engaged, which is kind of nice, because they are. We're taking hundreds of phone calls. I believe last Friday we took 300 and some calls because people are confused, but we're here. So we want to answer the phones. We want to make sure people know that they get the answers that they need to know so that they can vote wherever they want to, whether that's early or at their polling location or at their early voting site.
We do have one additional question. Do we have enough election judges? Would you like to start with that, Karen? Do we have enough election judges?
Yes, and it was quite the struggle. Many of them feared working because of the COVID, but the high schoolers have been a tremendous help to us. They're great. They're great election judges. They pick up on it fast, like they've been doing it for years. I think some of the older crowd, they backed off because they fear the pandemic. Also, I failed to mention, and I'd love to share this if I could, we've had 22,000 requests to date for vote by mail. And it has presented quite a challenge to my office. I don't know about Roxanna's office, but my staff has been working 7 days a week. There's 10 of us, and we didn't see that coming. We've always had vote by mail, but not to this degree. So that's the difference.
Thank you, Roxanna. Do you want a chance to answer that as well?
Well, we've been lucky. So the Secretary of State put in his state portal website a recruitment tool in the primary to get election officials. And so I want to say this previous week, we took 175 applications for people that wanted to work in the election. So I think we see people wanting to be engaged in this election. And one of the ways they want to do that is working at the polls. So right now, we really think we have enough people. Of course, we're 45 days out, so we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, but making sure that we have enough people will be a high priority, of course. And really, one of our main focuses, I'm sure Karen as well, is the safety and welfare of every single person at that polling location, all of our staff and our poll workers as well, making sure that we are keeping their safety at the forefront of our minds.
And we have one last question. Roxanna, we'll have you answer that first. And then if you have any closing thoughts, what do you expect in-person election day turnout to be? And then we'll go to Karen for her answer to this as well as her final thoughts.
So we're thinking about 30%. So, 35,000, but really as we move closer into the election and we see what's coming through the early voting, we'll have a better idea of what's going to happen on election day. That's one of the reasons I put the tool where I did a GIS overlay with my land records and my election library so that we could tell how to better staff each location. As we are recruiting our poll workers, we're not necessarily placing them yet, just kind of waiting to see how many people we'll need at each location, in addition to our greeters and of course our cleaners, the people that will actually, the 3 or 4 that will run the e-poll books. So we're kind of putting a day-by-day, A plan, a B plan, and a C plan in place, just to make sure that we have everything. And as we move into October, we'll have a better idea of where we're really sitting as far as early requests. So Karen talked about her staff having to work a lot of hours. We had to do that in the primary. And because of that, I chose to do an absentee request form for my office. And we did it early on so that we would have time to get all of those requests in without overtime and without stressing my staff. So we're doing a little bit of overtime, not what Karen is, but saving that for that last stretch, those last 30 days where we all know when elections are really tough and we work a lot of hours to ensure that we're, making sure we're not making mistakes and we have a clear mind moving into November 3rd.
Thank you. Okay, Karen, would you like to answer that question and provide any additional insight? This was, what do you expect in-person election day turnout to be?
Well, I'm hoping that people take advantage of the vote by mail, but we don't know how many applications are going to come down the pike during the time up until election day. So I would think at least 40% will show up at the polls on election day. Out of our 86,600. So
Okay.
that's pretty good turnout. And we will be prepared to handle them. As Roxanna said, we'll have greeters at the door to walk them through the process. We'll have the social distancing in place. I don't want people crowded. If need be, some of them may get discouraged when they see a line and leave and come back. And for the first time, we're also having voting in the county clerk's office on election day. And I would think that would also be a good alternative if you go to your polling place and realize that the line is too long. So.
Well, thank you both to Karen and Roxanna for joining us today. We know this topic is on the minds of Scott and Rock Island County residents, and so we appreciate the information you've been able to share. And thank you again to Janet and Ed for sharing the public health information as it relates to this. This briefing is being recorded. It will be posted on the Scott County, Iowa website and then shared on both of our social media pages. So we encourage you to visit it there should you need any additional information. But thank you to our media partners for joining us today, and we look forward to talking with you again later this week. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Janet.